Claudia, you were speaking in the session on enriching science with citizens' voices. Now, you are involved on innovative citizen participation. How do you think we involve citizens in the scientific process?
Yes, it's a very good question. I work on innovative citizen participation, particularly in public decision making. So questions around science, around what we should do about facial recognition technologies, about genome editing, all these sorts of things are actually very political questions. And so a lot of the work that we are looking at is about how do you actually create meaningful opportunities for people to be shaping decisions about these kinds of topics, creating the conditions for them to be able to learn, to hear from experts, to hear from stakeholders, to grapple with complexity, and to work together to also come up with concrete policy recommendations for policymakers.
Because often the perception is it's top-down from the policymakers or the scientists to the citizen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we even heard a lot of that going on today about there's a need to educate people more, there's a need to communicate better. And it's true, of course, we need to do those things, but that rests at a very top-down level and a little bit paternalistic in the approach of, the power ultimately stays with the same people if that's all we're doing. So I think we also need to be thinking about how do we actually change the governance structures so that everyday people are also playing a role in actually the decision-making around these things too, because we have the evidence that shows that people are more than capable of doing it, and not only that, but they're the ones who are listening to the scientists and the experts. So if, for instance, we think about the Citizens' Convention on Climate that took place in France last year, there were 150 randomly selected citizens. They worked for 9 months. They heard from experts. They deliberated. They came up with 150 recommendations, really far-reaching. But the government then watered them down, didn't do some of them. And so actually, we need to be hearing more from citizens and giving some of that decision-making role towards them as well.
And really valuing their contribution as well, not just as people who benefit from decisions, but who can actively contribute to those decisions.
Yeah, and to lead to better decisions as well, because there's also a huge amount of evidence which shows that more diverse groups of people lead to better decisions than more homogeneous groups of experts.
So, GESDA, how do you think it can help the scientists and the citizens better interact?
Well, it's interesting because I've just been here for the day, so it's my first impressions of this, but I feel like GESDA is a really great initiative, and it's good to see it connecting the science community and the diplomacy community. What I think would be really cool would be to see how citizens can actually be brought in together in this, and I think there could be something of a convening role that could bring the citizens also to hear from the scientists, then to have the policymakers listening to them. So I don't know if there's any interest in that, but going beyond the talk we've heard about needing to have more public deliberation and so on, I think GESDA could actually play a role in being a catalyst for that.
So we actually need to see more citizens here in Geneva, either at the summit or going forward, taking part in the GESDA activities.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I mean, if you look around, I as a woman and as a relatively young person stood out a little bit today. So it's not the most diverse group of people, and that's fair enough. There's a community that's here and that's working on it, but I think there needs to be a real effort when we hear so much talk about inclusiveness and diversity to actually make the effort to make that happen.